And welcome to our Sunday school time. This is Geneva Nelson, and I just want to tell you we are doing something a little new today. You know, technology is something, but we need to keep up with the times. And so, therefore, if things don't go quite as smoothly as they normally do, it's not you, it's us. All right. But now, if you don't have the lesson, you can get the lesson by going to the St. Stephen app. If you've got that, go to it and pull the lesson up, or you can go to your email and go to info at ssclive.com, pull up the lesson. If you don't have it in front of you, I just really encourage you to get it later because this is a lesson you are going to want to deal with. It comes in a question. Do you see me? I guess really with us doing new technology today, I could ask you that question. Do you see me? But that's what the lesson is about. We are continuing in the series, Jesus and the Disinherited. And so our aim is that we, and when I say we, I'm talking about the church. This lesson is to church people. We need to follow the royal law, love your neighbor as yourself. But to do that, you must first see your neighbor. So there's a long standing view among many people of various faiths that hold that wealth is a sign of God's blessings. And this is especially among white America. We reason, even if subconsciously, that if God is showing favor to this person, then perhaps that's what I need to do is honor that person also. But on the other hand, poverty is a sign of God's withholding his favor, perhaps even of God's displeasure or curse. We reason we reason that if people are suffering from poverty, their relationship with God must be negative, and we should not accommodate them. I'll make my point. Job's friends felt that way. They figured that Job had to do something to lose everything. In fact, in Job chapter 4, verse 7 and 8, now I'm reading from the New Living Translation. This is what they said. Stop and think. Do the innocent die? When have the upright been destroyed? My experience shows that those who plant trouble and cultivate evil will harvest the same. And that's the way that we think. Now, we stop and think, what have I done to deserve this? And when we see people out on the street, the homeless, we feel they had to have done something. Now, we got a point to ponder. I want you to look. We're going to show you some pictures. I want you to look closely, and then let's see what you see in these pictures. Roll that first picture for me, Sharon. I'll roll all of them, 1, 2, and 3. I want you to look at these pictures. Don't just be scared through them. Look, what do you see here? That's picture number 1. What do you see? I Here's another one. What do you see? She said, God, lost family. I've lost my home. I've lost everything. Please help me. Do you see him? Now, here's the other picture. Look, he is there. Do you see the people passing by? They look like they on their way to a sporting event. And yet you have a homeless man sitting out front praying. But they don't see him, do they? So we feel these people had to have done something. I mean, if you remember John chapter 9, Jesus' disciples, asked Jesus when they saw the blind man, who sinned, Lord, that he was born blind? They felt that if he was born blind, somebody did something somewhere. So who sinned? Him? How could he have sinned? He wasn't born yet. Are his parents. And my sisters and brothers, this lesson, we want you to stop and take a look at ourselves. Now, here's another point to ponder. What do you think when you see the people that we just got through showing you? Or did you see them? Really, really see them? Did you think, oh, well, they just lazy? That God is punishing them for something? That they are in that condition due to bad decision making? Let me give you the 4 factors that may lead to poverty. Number 1, physical handicap. Let me get in the Bible. Bartimaeus, you remember he was blind, and there he is, blind and begging, but not because of poor decision making. He was just blind. But God got the glory because he healed him. Another fact, the death of a breadwinner. And perhaps you saw the woman in that second picture that said, I've lost my home, I've lost my family, I've lost my job, I've lost everything. Perhaps her husband died. You remember in the scripture of the widow with the oil. That's in 2 Kings chapter 4. When the collectors, the creditors were coming to take her sons and sell them because she was in debt. Why? Because her husband died. Ah, let's go to Ruth, the story of Ruth and Naomi. You remember, Ruth and Naomi came together, but Naomi went to Moab, and in Moab, Elimelech, that's her husband, who had taken the family to Moab in the first place to do up and die in Moab. And if that wasn't bad enough, the sons died. Now, Naomi and Ruth are poor. Then there's the other reason, famine and a drought. You remember we studied once before in Ridiculous Faith about the widow in Zarephath, that there had been a drought. And so therefore, she didn't have anything to eat. In fact, when Elijah came to her, she said, I got just another little bread, a little flour, a little oil. I'm going to make some bread and then feed my child, and then we're going to die. You remember that? Okay. And what did she do? Nothing. Nothing. And then there's lack of natural resources. So when you put all 4 factors and combine them with human greed, it creates a tremendous wealth gap. And my sisters and brothers, we see that now in this here United States that we've got, because of COVID-19, jobs have been lost. Unemployment is high. People are losing their homes. They're out on the streets. How can we fault them? I saw something just yesterday that said nature brought in COVID, Trump brought in the crisis. He made a crisis out of COVID. And look at the people that are losing everything. Now, notice I keep using a word. That's the little small word over and over. It was even in the title of our lesson. Do you see me? Well, I think sometimes we need to stop and think about little words. See. What does see mean? SEE. It can be defined as discern, or grasp, or understand, or comprehend, or perceive. In other words, when we see something, Do we comprehend? Do we grasp? Do we understand? Or do we just look? Oh, wait a minute, wait a minute. So am I saying there's a difference between seeing and looking? See, when you look, you can direct one's graves and just glance at something, or you can stare at something, and then you go on. But there's another look that can be just like see, examine a matter and consider what action to take. That's what John meant when he said, look, the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world. In other words, see him, discern, grasp, understand. But when you look, examine and consider Jesus. And we need to see what our fellow brothers out on the street. You see, the problem is people see what we do and not who we are. That's the problem. And then we label them by what they do. We see beggars that don't work or don't want to work. Or we feel they blew their money by making bad decisions. Yeah, they probably spent their money on drugs or alcohol. Maybe they just didn't. Did you ever think that they had a catastrophic illness that wiped out their bank account? Oh, my sisters and brothers, when you looked at those pictures, what did you see? Did you see how they all had their head bowed? In other words, like they couldn't even, too ashamed to look at people in the eye. Did you see they all had, and they had their hands folded as if they were praying, let somebody see and help me. That's what Jesus wants us to do. You remember, it's just a couple of weeks ago, we said, riddle, 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 ree. I see something you don't see. Jesus wants us to see these people. And another thing that when we look at those pictures, you go back to your lesson, you look at those pictures again, or some other pictures when we come to them, we need to see that these people are made in the image of God, just like you and me. And we should think, except by the grace of God, there goes I. Now, so I have a question for you. Point number one, we're going to look at in this lesson. How do you see yourself, Christian? Yeah, I'm being a little sarcastic with that, with calling you a Christian, because some of us, we put such stock in being called, I'm a Christian. But are you acting like one, walking like one? Okay. All right, let's go. Luke chapter 18, starting at verse 9. And I'm reading from the message now because I like the way that he wrote this thing in the message. Start at verse 9 in the message, Luke 18. He told this, he told his next story to some who were complacently pleased with themselves over their moral performance and looked down their noses at the common people. Two men, here's the parable, went up to the temple to pray, one a Pharisee, the other a tax man. The Pharisee paused and prayed like this: Oh God, I thank you that I am not like other people, robbers, crooks, adulterers, or heaven forbid, like this tax man. I fast twice a week and I tithe on all my income. Meanwhile, the tax man, slumped in the shadows, his face in his hands, not daring to look up, said, God, have mercy, forgive me, a sinner. Jesus commented, this tax man went home, made right with God. If you walk around with your nose in the air, you're going to end up flat on your face. But if you continue to be simply yourself, you will become more than yourself. Now, when you get the time, I want you to go back to that first page. I want you to look at those pictures again. But what I want you to do is put yourself in their place. Now, whoo, listen to me, listen to me. Get this, get this. You are begging Jesus. See, you in the picture, you the one holding up the sign. You are begging Jesus. And guess what? He walks by. Oh, God Almighty. I don't know about y'all, but I don't know. I could stand that. How would you feel? How would you feel? Well, let me let you in on a little secret. You were at one time a beggar. Woo! Ouch. Now, didn't that hurt? That hurt. Because I just told you, you were no better than what you see the people out on the street. You were a beggar. And guess what? You still are a spiritual beggar, begging God for grace and mercy. Before I came on this morning, when I got up this morning, because my family is in a crisis, I beg God for grace and mercy. I don't deserve grace. We don't deserve mercy, but I begged him for it anyway. I'm a beggar. God, you got to do something. Your hands are bigger than mine, so here, I'm putting them in your hands. Begging, begging, groveling. I got news for you. That's what our foreparents used to do. They lay flat on their face. They didn't mind bow and prostrate before God, begging him. But you know, oh, we too proud. We got too much education for that kind of stuff. But here's the thing. We begging, and we were beggars. But here's the good news. He saw us. And here's what he did. He became poor so that we might become rich. He became homeless so that we might have a mansion. He died so that we might live. And he came down so that we could go up. Woohoo! I don't know about y'all, but that sounds good to me. I have to say that again. He became poor so that we might become rich. He became homeless, not for me just to have a home, but have a mansion. He died so that I might live. And he came down so that I could go up. Now, but now let's go back and consider the Pharisee. He was selfish. He was selfish in his attitude, and he was selfish in his action. Because in his attitude, he was self-righteous. Lord, I just want to thank you that I'm not like other men. Self-adoration. I'm not like him. I'm not a robber. I'm not a crook. I'm not a gangster. Lord, he's pleased with himself. And look at his actions, self-serving. I want you to know I tithe on everything I get. Well, guess what? If you got it to pay your tithes, that's because God blessed you to have what you have in the first place. That's how come we should be willing to get up and give God what, 10 cents out of every dollar? You know, it was several, maybe a couple of years ago now. We did a lesson that says that if you don't pay your tithe, then all you're saying is, God, you're not worth a dime. That's what we're saying. So, and so he's proud of himself because, hey, I pay my money. But now he feels entitled. And too many people uh, uh, feel entitled. He feels deserving. Why? Because he's special. Well, now let's look at the other man, the publican. Yeah, he's tax collector. They use that word interchangeably. A publican was a tax collector. A tax collector was a sinner. But notice his attitude. He feels unworthy. He feels unacceptable. He said, Lord, just have mercy on a sinner like me. And look at his actions. He's humble. He's repentant. He feels he's a nobody and deserving of nothing. Yeah, and I'm going to ask you. Oh, I know your answer. I know your answer. I know what you're going to say. Which person are you? If you feel like and say, well, I'm like the publican, then I have another question. Why do you act like the Pharisee? Because that's what we do. And we need to understand. Notice for each one of them, I said his attitude and his action. A bird has two wings. And guess what? Our attitude leads to some action. That's how come we feel comfortable walking past the homeless because our attitude. Well, they're getting what they deserve, so we walk on past. All right. So the first question was, how do you see yourself Christian? Now I got another question. How do you see yourself church? Church. Let's go to James. James, um, chapter 2, starting at verse 1 through 9. And I'm reading from the NIV this time. Listen, James says, oops, and the first word tell you who he's talking to. My brothers and sisters, just in case you don't know who I'm talking to, he said, believers. Wow. In our glorious Lord Jesus Christ must not show favoritism. Whoa. Suppose a man comes into your meeting wearing a gold ring and fine clothes, and a poor man in filthy old clothes also come in. If you show, listen here, if you show special attention to the man wearing fine clothes and say, here's a good seat for you, but say to the poor man, you stand over there, or you sit here on the floor by my feet. Have you not discriminated among yourselves and become judges with evil thoughts? Listen, my dear brothers and sisters, has not God chosen those who are poor in the eyes of the world to be rich in faith and to inherit the kingdom he promised those who love him? But you have dishonored the poor. Is it not the rich who are exploiting you? Hello. Hey, are they not the ones who are dragging you into court? Are they not the ones who are blaspheming the noble name of him to whom you belong? Oh, yes, indeed. Oh, yes, indeed. If you really keep the royal law found in Scripture, love your neighbor as yourself, you are doing right. And let me just put a pin right there for a minute and say to you, next week's lesson is, who is my neighbor? Ah, think I'm going to let you get away? Not that easy. No, 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 no. So he said, love your neighbor as yourself. And next week, I'm going to ask you, who is my neighbor? Mm-hmm. Now, go back, verse 9. But if you show favoritism, you sin and are convicted by the law as law breakers. Now, James is upset about something he has seen in the holy gatherings. That means the worship service. Rich people were getting special treatment. James had a famous brother, if you please, with the same feelings. He didn't like that, giving rich people special treatment. I'm going to prove my point. Luke chapter 14, verses 12 through 14, reading from the NIV. Then Jesus, that's James's famous brother, said to his host, when you give a luncheon or dinner, do not invite your friends, your brothers or your sisters, your relatives or your rich neighbors. If you do, they may invite you back, and so you will be repaid. But when you give a banquet, invite the poor, the cripple, the lame, the blind, and you will be blessed. Although they cannot repay you, you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous. Woo, God Almighty, I like that. And if you heard it several weeks ago, Dr. Cosby preached this, and I mean, my pastor stepped on that thing, stepped on the toes too. All of us are tempted to treat people differently, especially if someone can do something in return for you. You know that you scratch my back, I'll scratch your back. You remember that? Yeah, you do. If you're invited to a banquet, take the last place. If you throw a banquet, invite the last people. You see, because at the great banquet that God the Father's going to have, the last and the least, hear me now, the last and the least will not only be the guest of honor, they will be the most populous group there. It's going to be more of them than the rich and the famous. So James is not talking to the world. He's not talking to the world. He is talking to believers, children of God, church people, Christians, Christ followers, whatever you want to call yourself. That's who he's talking to. And James is warning them about being biased. You see, because he's saying when you bias, you're gonna show partiality. You're gonna show partiality, and then you're gonna be prejudiced. And prejudice just means you're gonna prejudge somebody. Then he said, you see, and then you need to check your behavior. And when we say check your behavior, he's saying, look, you need to adjust your attitude. See, I told you a bird has two wings. One is called attitude, one's called behavior or action, just so that we can keep the A's together. Attitude and action. And your attitude will cause you to act in a certain way, and your action will show what kind of attitude you have. Woo! Teach, Geneva. So he wants them to adjust their attitude. In other words, be faithful in following the examples of Christ in the way that we interact with others. Be faithful. Now, several years back, there was a say, WWJD, what would Jesus do? That's when you see the homeless, when you see them, people living out on the streets. Ask yourself, and you get ready to go by, ask yourself, what would Jesus do. And that's the way that we should act. So adjust their attitude. Then he wants them to align their actions. You know, many times when we go in to get our car done, we get new tires on, we get a new alignment. That means everything into correct, appropriate relation with the automobile. Because I don't know too much about. I just say, yeah, yo, align that so that it won't be out of whack. The front and the back are going, trying to do different things. And that's what we've got to do, align our actions to be more like Jesus. But for us to do that, for us to be able to align our actions, it requires knowing how Jesus interact with others. Woo! Oh, talk to me. See, Jesus did not Jesus did not practice partiality. He did not practice favoritism. He did not show animosity. The world says use people, but Jesus says serve people. And here's the thing that he said: we serve to serve, and not to gain. Oh, you didn't hear me. We serve to serve and not to gain. So let me ask you this. Is the church of today, point to ponder, is the church of today guilty of some of the same practices we see in the world? Is the church guilty of some of the same practices in James' observation? We go after folks that we think are all important, that can give some status to our church. Well, the status that we need. Oh, I just remember a little illustration. Perhaps this will make it. Little boy didn't feel so good, and it was Palm Sunday, and so he had to stay home. So when his parents came back, and his sister and brothers, and they all came back home, they had the palm branches. And so the little boy wanted to know, well, what happened in church day? Well, what is those? And the dad explained that everybody waved palm branches because Jesus was coming. And the little boy said, oh man, he come today and this was the day that I missed. In other words, he's saying Jesus coming this Sunday and I missed it. And Jesus ought to be in when we get back into worship services, Jesus ought to be there up front. It's not about us. It's all about him. Now I'm going to show you that I'm in the scripture. Romans 2:11 says, NIV, for God does not show favoritism. Colossians 3:25. Anyone who does wrong will be repaid for their wrong. And there is no favoritism. You did wrong, you get paid for your wrong. Ephesians 6:9. This is the Amplified Version. You masters, act on the same principle toward them and give up threatening and using violence and abusive words, knowing that he who is both their master and yours is in heaven, and that there is no respect of persons, no partiality with him. See, I could say, you rich people, act the same towards poor people. Give up threatening and using violence and abusive words, knowing that he who is both their master and yours is in heaven. and that there is no respect of persons, no partiality with him. And then let's look at Acts chapter 10, 34 through 35. This is the Good News translation. Peter began to speak. I now realize that it is true that God treats everyone on the same basis. Those who fear him and do what is right are acceptable to him, no matter what race they belong to. Now, we just got through going through an election, and the only reason candidates didn't show up at your churches is because the church is scattered. Because otherwise, the only time that we even see, and some churches bend over backwards to give these candidates reception, be seen. I'm not saying that we have to ignore or what have you, but treat the least, the less, the lost the same way that you would the rich and the famous. Now, I'm going to ask the producer to flash up some more pictures. I want you to see. I want you to see some more pictures that we got of the homeless, the least, the less, and the lost. Now, there you see. You see them, and they walking past. They walking past. But do you see the head down and praying as if was somebody, please help me. So that's why we call the lesson, do you see me? Now look, this is in every city almost of the United States. And I hate to say it, but yeah, here in Louisville, Kentucky, and when we get close to Derby time, now we go out and want to move them because we want you to think that we don't have homeless folks. Everybody's got homeless people. And look at this man. Look, basket cart, loaded. That's all he's got. Sitting there, sitting there. And we will walk right past him. I tell you, my sisters and brothers, the Spirit is trying to install a new value system and a way of seeing in humanity. One based on concern. Are you concerned? And one based on the honor of the least of these, my brethren. When we align our actions with a loving attitude, the gospel will go out to everyone equally. We will treat everyone the same, regardless of position, popularity, prestige. Proverbs 22:2 says, rich and poor have this in common. The Lord is the maker of them all. God has chosen the poor. You need to know that. James 2:5 says, has not God chosen those who are poor in the eyes of the world to be rich in faith and to inherit the kingdom he promised those who loved him? Luke 4:18, and he's quoting Isaiah 61. This is what Jesus said, the Spirit of the Lord. You remember we did that when we first started this series. The Spirit of the Lord is on me because he has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. And my sisters and brothers, the majority of the world is poor. I'll never forget when I was working so many years ago at a place called Kentucky Children's Home. What happened was one weekend I took These little boys. Whew, help, where'd I go, Sharon? I don't see nobody no more. Okay, if you can hear me, I'm gonna keep on talking because I don't know what happened. That I'm not. I don't see nothing anymore. All right. Anyway, uh, these little boys. I I carried two of them home, and I just knew I didn't have much of anything. But what happened was that I'm still trying to get back to you all. I don't know how to do it.
Keep going, babe. I got
You got me? Okay. Anyway, these two little boys, um, they came to my house, and I was just trying to make ends meet, what I thought. So you know what happened? When I told them they go on in the refrigerator and have some milk, they said, "Can we have?" I said, "You can have as much milk as you want." They saw I had a telephone in the kitchen. I saw I had a telephone in the living room. They saw I had a TV in the kitchen. Also, I had two TVs, and they said, "Wow, didn't know you were rich." And I thought, I'm not rich, but in their eyesight, I was rich. But let me tell you, when for those of us who have experienced poverty, and I know one thing I knew, I didn't know I was rich to them because you see, we grew up poor. I only found out later that we were poor because my mother did a good job of hiding it. We never missed a meal. My sister and I, we didn't miss a meal, but perhaps my mother did. But we've learned something about our fellow man and about God that cannot come from having worldly riches. We learn that people we think care about us, they don't. They are not happy when we begin to move ahead. In fact, they will put roadblocks in our way. But here's the great thing that we learn: we would never know God is all we need until God is all we have. And that we are able to form a special bond with God in our moments of desperation. And see, we have moments of desperation. And that's why this morning, in my moment of desperation, as I said earlier, that some family problems, is that I felt that I could go to Him and cast all my cares on Him because I know Him. I know His track record. I got His track record, and I know that He can and will answer prayer. This is why Jesus and James both agree that we have more to learn from the poor many times over than what we can learn from the rich and successful. The very first words of the very first sermon given by Jesus makes it clear the poor are a priority to God because he says, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for they shall see God." And should that not be a priority to us? Then I'm going to ask Sister Sharon to put up that last picture. And I want you to take a good look at the picture. As it simply says, Once I was like you. In other words, I had a home. I didn't live out on the street. I had a job. So the question is, do you see me now? Do you see me now? That's our lesson for today. Next week, we will talk about who is my neighbor. Until then, God bless you. God keep you. Stay safe. Wear your mask. Practice social distancing. God loves you, and so do I. See you next week.